Alright guys, Papa Pepper here. Today I'm going to talk about why we do raised beds. Now traditionally, I'm not a raised bed guy. It was always a nice big old rectangle garden. Till the whole thing, keep enriching the entire garden, and do it that way for years. That's how I gardened. A couple things happened that have made me transition to raised beds, like the ones you see behind me. And I'm going to talk to you in this video a little bit about it. For the most part, there's what I would say two key factors. The first one is pretty obvious, and then I'll get to the second one a little later in the video. So the first reason, and the main reason, especially down here, that we decided to go to a raised bed type style of gardening is if you look behind me, this is the soil here in the Ozarks. And the soil here in the Ozarks is mostly rock and clay. I mean, look at this. This is one of my pastures here. I let everyone eat this down to about nothing so I can restart it. But man, this is the pasture here. Look at this. And it's just nothing but rock. There is so much of this on my property. And on the bright side, I do view incredibly large amounts of rock as an actual resource. But if you were thinking about, you plant potatoes in there and have to dig them up, or set something like Jerusalem artichokes down and then let them run with it, it never happened. It never happened. I'll show you a couple other examples of just my soil here. Like I said, this is just, one of the pastures. And every little white thing you see there is nothing but rocks. As you dig down beneath the surface, this is what you get to. It's just a bunch of clay, and you can see there's a lot of rocks in there. I've already taken a lot of the rocks out, but most of it underneath the surface is clay too. So except for on top of like the forest floor where you actually have the decomposing leaves and branches and stuff like that, this is what our option would be to garden around here. So of course there are better portions of our property too, but if you look behind me, this is all the same thing here, which is nothing but rocks and stones everywhere, which is why we made this bed for the Jerusalem artichokes. We chose to build it up. If I plant them down in here, I mean, they shoot a little like runner out, and then they shoot out a cluster of the tubers that you're going to eat. I would never find them all. They'd just, the runners would break off, the tubers would be there throughout the year, and we'd just have more and more that just kept spreading every year that we would never really be able to harvest or use. So in a raised bed with loose soil, fresh stuff, it's going to be a lot easier than any of this. And one interesting thing too, just the other day, like I said, we bucket it all up, we relocate it, we use it, we got purposes for it. It's a resource in my opinion, but this is kind of like part of one area of the driveway. You can see there's a couple divots I was making because all these guys here I'm pulling up to actually make raised beds with. So you can see all that came out of my driveway. There's, that's a smaller one. This guy's pretty big, and some of them are just too big to get out. I'm going to pull all these out first before we kind of put down some more creek gravel and begin to work through this. But look at the size of some of these things. I can't really garden in that, and that's only what's showing. That thing could be, 10 feet by 8 feet down there under the surface. So when you've got that type of soil, is the main determining factor in why we raise bed, garden, and I'll show you one more thing when I get back to the garden. So when we had transplanted a plum tree, wild plum tree that I had grafted into 3 years ago when I first moved to the Ozarks, down into our Muscovy duck pen, BobMelsGardens commented and said, "Man, your soil doesn't look as bad as I thought it did. I thought it was rocky there." Obviously this video shows that he was right. It is rocky here. The deal is that we just happened to have a spot that in my little digging didn't encounter many rocks. So here in our garden, and of course this is a very non-typical garden. I mean, if you look around, and this is just the beginning of it. It heads all the way up, through here, back there, and back. There's a couple things that we're doing. Number one, compared to the actual soil here, that's just rock and clay. What I wanted to do is find the big rocks, make borders, okay, for my raised beds. I'm mulching the paths in between to suppress the weeds, but then covering them as well in the winter. So when I can sit there out in my pasture where I showed you all those rocks and reach down and just pretty much break my nails and bloody my knuckles, or bloody my fingertips trying to dig into the dirt, compared to something like this, where I can just grab up a nice full set of stuff, deep, rich, organic, wonderful. And then every year too, like you can see, I've got rabbit manure piled up around my Yasta berries here. Got a big plum and Manchurian apricot that are going to be coming up over the top, and then we'll find something kind of for the ground level too, like maybe some of this purple ice plant, which is here, which has a lot of good reasons to have it besides just being a cool looking plant. So the reason that we did this then is, one, it gives us something to do with our rocks, but it allows us to have a growing medium that is so far above and beyond what's just normally, naturally here, being the rock and clay, to have it in an enclosed area where we can enrich it year after year. And even with the amount of soil amendments that we do, the actual soil here is a mix of some of what you find composting naturally on the forest floor, under the leaf litter as things break down. As we transition through some of this, there's a degree of that before you run into just kind of the solid rock and clay. It's some of that. It's some rabbit manure. The primary reason we have rabbits right now is just to use their manure to enrich the soil, to build something up and have a great growing medium for us. Then we're also doing things like I'm making a stinging nettle fertilizer. We make our own fish emulsion. We do our own composting, and all those things are going to add to these soils, and then build them up where even if we grow the same plant in an area, normally you don't want to do that in the garden, but I think we're adding so much new stuff in that you're not going to have a depletion of soils, of nutrients that those plants need. What you do run into though is still the probably certain parasites or bugs or things that are going to mess with it can have a presence then because they're growing in the same area, but we got plenty of room to rotate around. And the other main reason, besides just the rocks and clay that the actual soil here is that some years ago I've been exposed to the whole Garden of Eden, the no-till gardening type mentality, and you can obviously use that very well in a raised bed. So just kind of trying to disturb the soil less, build it up more, keep it covered in the winter so we're not having different weed seeds and things popping into it, and just allow it to be there. And you just kind of pull back that covering and reach down into it with your hands, go down 6, 7, 8 inches is incredible. My garden I used to have in Wisconsin would put a lot of different things in there, a lot of our kitchen scraps, a lot of the leaves we rake up at the end of the year. I'd till it every spring, and sometimes we'd just till it by hand, and I'd just have the kids collect like a year's supply of night crawlers and worms and stuff, and then more would fill back in the garden from the yard. We wouldn't really deplete the population. We'd just grab enough for us to use for fishing for the year. And every year I was just tilling in, doing it that way. Probably would have continued to do that, but I'm glad that the rocks and the clay here in the Ozarks encouraged me to go about it this other way. For one, it's a interesting looking garden. I mean, you look behind me with this tunnel and things going on. There's some cool stuff back there. I mean, it looks really neat and presentable. You should see it in the spring when all the green's coming up and all the paths are mulched and everything just looks so nice. And I'll link my garden philosophy video as far as just a garden not only being a place to grow food, but a place to be, and building it in such a manner, which is what we're doing here. So those are the two main reasons, just kind of using a no-till, back to Eden gardening method like you would see, and then also having something better than rock and clay to grow in. So that's that. I think I'm done rambling. I don't think there's much more I can share. You saw the rocks, as BobMelsGardens said. Yeah, he thought there was a lot of rocks here. Trust me, that's where these came from. A lot of these came off our old property. Now the neighbors also have a bunch that they don't really want, so they're nice enough to share, and we certainly appreciate that. And then actually behind me, on the top of the garden, between the garden and the pasture, I'm actually going to have a build where I'm going to build a rock wall with some cattle panels, I think, and just kind of have a nice dividing wall between the two. And on the other side of there is a road where people drive back and forth. So it'll be a little more privacy for the garden and kind of for us as we're working and doing things. And we'll have a row of mulberry trees and yellow raspberries in front of that. But this row here is actually going to be transitioned to a rock wall where I put some cattle panels up in a way that I can fill the middle with rock. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll work well. It'll prevent the goats and sheep from reaching through and eating my raspberries and mulberries and stuff too. But purpose is there's a lot of rocks around here. We've got a lot we can use them for, but I'm not going to be planting in the rocks. So that's why we raised bed garden. It works well for us. We've had an incredible thing, and actually, you know, all these ones here, I can't even, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. 41. There's actually 41 different raised beds right here. Some of them are this big or smaller. Other ones are bigger. Some of them are different shapes, but they're all here. Some of them are perennial. This is a perennial one. Some of them are annual. We're just gonna plant them every year. Some of them are rather big and full of hops and things. Other ones got Korean goji berries growing in them, and yeah, but anyway, all of that, I did this 2018. I started with nothing of that. So all the rocks for all 41 of those, and they're actually like 2 layers high right now. They're getting deeper. Was all done last year. Wow, that's a lot of raised beds. But I'll tell you what, there's more to come. We need a lot of food. Number 6 for the little peppers is on the way, so big family, getting bigger. All right, guys. Raised bed, Papa Pepper. That's why. Rocks and no-till. Papa out.
As always, I'm Papa Pepper, and I'd like to remind you, don't post for free. If you'd like to be part of a revolution in social media, an economic power to the people where users can actually blog for cryptocurrency, then I'd recommend that you check out steemit.com and join the revolution. Papa out.